Welcome to Popternative, where we dive into topical discussions from the worlds of pop culture, social media, and sports. Here is your host, Peter Remoliotis, aka PD Beats.
PD Beats here from Popternative, speaking to Madison and Elizabeth Lagares about Grease: Rise of the Pink Ladies, streaming now on Paramount Plus. Welcome to the show. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
I mean, this is so exciting. I remember when the show was announced and now episodes are rolling out. It's pretty crazy.
I know, I'm still in shock. It's amazing. It's so fun to be a part of.
I have so many questions about the audition and filming this thing, which is just incredible. Like, the color palette of this show is unbelievable, Madison. But acting, storytelling, when did that kind of start for you? Like, did you always want to be a storyteller?
So it started when I was 5. I always loved telling the story. So, when I was kind of in kindergarten, I was extremely hyper. And I was jumping off the walls. My parents were like, what are we going to do with this child? And so they put me into a bunch of things. They put me into soccer, into dance, into so many different things. And then my kindergarten teacher was like, you should put her into theater. She's actually very expressive, when she reads books in class. And my mom was like, okay. So she put me into a local theater production, and I did very well. And actually, I really, really enjoyed it. And so she noticed how I was kind of coming out of my shell and how I was kind of putting all my energy into that one thing. So then she kind of, we kind of fostered that, and we continued to kind of build my love for theater and for acting. And then that's when I got, started getting vocal lessons, and I started off with acting lessons. And then from there, I kind of grew into my own person, and, here I am. So I've always loved it. It's been something that I've kind of been doing for such a long time, and I wouldn't have it any other way.
And
so
theater really is where you learn the craft.
It really is.
That's kind of where it all kind of starts, right? If you think about it.
It is, yeah. And acting, honestly, in general, it kind of, you can put it into so many different things. You obviously put acting into dancing. You can put it into your singing, because you can't sing without emotion. So you always have to have that foundation of acting and theater to be able to do it. But theater and film are completely two different things, and I had to realize that when I got into my first movie when I was 6 years old, and I had been so used to being into theater. I was like, whoa, this is different. Everything's so much smaller. It's so much more in the eyes versus being so out there and with your body, and you have to get it to the back of the audience like what it is with theater. So
totally.
I get used to that, but now I have kind of a balance. I can switch it on and off. But Grease is a mixture between the two, so that's why it's so much.
And that's a perfect segue to my next question, because the audition process of this, I've interviewed a lot of your cast as well. I love hearing the audition stories for Rise of the Pink Ladies, because it seems like there were so many layers. So what was the audition like? I mean, it seems like there was a singing audition, there was a dancing audition, obviously the acting. What song did you choose? Did you audition for Fran Facciano, Frenchie? I'm just curious.
No, I did. I originally auditioned for Fran Frenchy, and I got the audition. I was like, oh my gosh, I definitely have to do this, because I had watched Grease so many times prior to it. So I was like, oh my gosh, it's going to be insane. This is going to be amazing. So I started, I watched the movie to get a little bit more background on Frenchie, the character. And it was really funny, because in the actual breakdown of what the self-tape was for the audition, it says, do not imitate Didi Khan for Frenchie. It says, do not imitate her voice. And so I was like, okay, that's fine. It was going to be a little difficult anyway to do it. So I was like, okay, it's fine. I'm not going to do it. So I did the audition. I got a call back. And for the final callback, I was right in front of them, and I was like, okay, this is a big thing. This is a big thing. So I'm like, to my mom, I think I'm going to do the voice. And my mom's like, no, you're not. No, you're not.
They said no.
And she's across the camera, and she's like, no. And I'm like, sorry, I'm going to do it. And so I did it, and they loved it. And I kind of pulled it out on the spot. I went based off of one line that I heard from the movie that Frenchie did, one of her main lines. And so I kind of built it off of that. And so the more that I started practicing that accent, the easier it came to me. So it was such a funny audition, honestly. I started off, if you notice, if you actually saw my original audition tape, it's so completely different from my final one. But I think essentially the acting's very similar. She's a very bubbly character, and I think that I'm kind of similar to that as well. So it was easy to be able to put myself into her.
Did you have to sing? Was there a singing audition?
There was a singing audition. So I sang the song Honey Honey from Mamma Mia, which I was in my Mamma Mia era at that time. I was watching all the movies, listening to all the songs. I was like, no, this would be such a good song. So I sang it and they loved it as well. And I also had a dancing audition, which was kind of a little nerve-wracking for me because I had to, obviously the video was going to be sent to Jamal Sims. And I was literally crying because I had done so many auditions for him in the past. And I was like, hey, this is the real deal. I got to make sure I bring it all out. And I did. So I guess they really liked both of them. So
It's crazy to think that you're going to be playing this like iconic character in like a prequel to like one of the greatest musicals of all time. Was there something you liked the most about Frenchie specifically? Whether it was like the Frenchie of the Grease movie or like seeing like kind of the prequel Frenchie, right? The original Frenchie, so to speak.
No, I've always loved Frenchie as a character. I think that she is such a sweetheart and I love her personality. She's so like bright and bubbly and welcoming to others. And I think that I can find a way to like bring myself into a lot of that as well because I'm a very outgoing person. So I think that that was really fun. And I love the way that she's just so supportive of her friends and she's very loyal. Like, and you can also see that in prequel Frenchie, like as me now, like you can notice how, you know, she's very supportive of her friends. She's a very loyal person. And once she's set on something, she is. And I think that it'll be really interesting to see how, you know, her character grows throughout the season and how she gets to, you know, just grow as a person and as a friend and how she eventually becomes, you know,
So
Pink
cool.
Lady.
That was such a cool reveal. And the Betty Rizzo reveal, so awesome.
So awesome. Yeah.
But you know what's cool is like going in, I don't know, like I have no idea, but like I go in fresh. I don't read anything. I just want to watch nothing, right? If you like read like rumblings or rumors about it, you would have the like, I had no, like Madison, I had no idea.
No,
Like-
they kept it a secret. They did. And that's what surprised so many people. They were like, oh my goodness, this is Frenchie and
But then
Rizzo.
you go back and you go back though and you do the math and it kind of makes sense, right? With a year.
Yeah, so no, it's amazing. It's such a dream come true to be able to play her.
You answered, okay, so you answered this a little bit when I asked you about the audition because you talked about kind of like preparing and everything. But just in general, going back in time, right? Going back into the 50s for the role, basically. What was that like? Are you thinking about aesthetic? Are you thinking about how the characters talk? Like, are you just thinking of all these things? Like, what is that like, kind of preparing to go back in time, basically, for Grease Rise of the Pink Ladies?
That's a good question. I personally, when I stepped onto set for the first time, it was it was like a pop of color and it was just insane. It was like I was literally stepping into the 50s and it was so cool to me because I was such a lover of Grease. The first time I ever stepped onto set, I was stepping into the house. I was stepping into Jane's house, which in the movie is Frenchie's room. Like it's right now it's James' room, but then it eventually becomes Frenchie's room. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm stepping into the set of a movie. And it's insane. Like they have the same windows, the same door, like sign. It's crazy. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is insane. And then also being able to wear like those cool costumes and the hairstyles, the funky hairstyles was so awesome. And I had to cut my hair short. Like it's grown a lot, but like it was like up to here when I cut it. So I was like, oh, that's a change. But no, just in general, just being able to step into that like period, it was really fun for me. And I honestly, I really did love it. And, you know, the colors, the costumes, just the way that everyone was like, the way that everyone had like, I don't know, acted. It was just like, it was a whole different vibe. And I'm like, I'm living in this generation now and it's so completely different from how it was then. Also, I had to do a couple of scenes in which I had to eat certain foods. And 50s food is very different from the food nowadays. It's a little, not great, but luckily they kind of improvise a little bit with that kind of thing. Like I wouldn't actually eat the disgusting things. Like they would kind of make a
Are
modified.
you talking about like the TV trays and the TV?
that was a very interesting scene. I remember for that scene they actually did feed me. It was spam, like raw spam.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, thank you. But luckily, I got to spit it out every single time, so I was good.
Did you feel like you were walking on eggshells a little bit, like even talking to your family because you really like you can't say much, like leading up to the episodes coming up, like you can't say anything.
It was the hardest secret I have ever had to keep. It was insane because like also when the promo started coming out, like I was like seeing all these commercials, like oh my gosh, but I couldn't say anything about it. So like inside, I was like, oh my gosh, I was like having my own celebration, and I really wanted to tell people. But I think that the surprise, honestly, it was a really good surprise. So I think it was worth the wait, honestly.
It's such a good surprise. And, you know, being able to be a character from the Grease movies is just, you probably think about it like all the time, right? Like it's not going to escape your mind, right?
It's crazy. It's amazing.
It's so crazy. I will say this too. One of my favorite songs of all time is Grease by Frankie Valli. So I love the fact that Grease is the World is like in the musical too. Yeah, like I love that. Cause like not even just like my favorite musical song, like I love that song.
It's an amazing song. And then the way that they also brought like the original songs to it, but then they also had that song, which is like the main song, and they have that as their kind of theme song, and it's so amazing. And honestly, it's like it's a whole new thing. It's the same thing, same vibe, but different story. And honestly, it goes into detail of these Pink Ladies who everyone's been wondering about for so long, like their origin story and stuff.
Betty Rizzo, the coolest person ever. Can you Betty Rizzo is like one of the coolest like characters of all time.
Oh my
Can we just say that?
Yes. Oh my gosh. Rizzo is like so badass, honestly.
Did it feel cinematic though? Some of the kind of scenes that you were filming, like I'm watching this movie, the TV show, and it feels like a movie. Like it's crazy.
Oh my gosh. It really is. Honestly, it's like you watch it and I was like, oh my gosh, wait, this is like almost an hour long, but it doesn't feel like it because you're like literally pulled in, you're sucked into the story, and you're like, oh my gosh, this does feel like a movie. It's amazing, and every single episode it just keeps getting better and better, and you just want to keep watching more. So it's crazy.
And episodes are rolling out, and people can watch it on Paramount Plus. That's Grease: Rise of the Pink Ladies. Madison, thank you so much for your time. It was so great chatting with you on Popternative.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Very quickly, your Instagram account, is that just your name specifically?
It's just Madison Lagares.
Perfect. So they can check that out. And I'm sure a lot of the cast had a lot of like behind the scenes stuff they really wanted to post, right? So they can check that out.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, this has been Popternative. YouTube.com/Popternative. For previous episodes, you can catch Madison Elizabeth Lagares as Fran Facciano, aka Frenchie, on Grease: Rise of the Pink Ladies, streaming on Paramount Plus. Until next time, it's Madison and PD Beats signing off.
Thank you for tuning in to Popternative. Make sure to check out our past episodes of Popternative on YouTube. Be sure to like Popternative on Facebook and follow us on Twitter.
This has been an Autograph Communications production.